Hello, fans, collectors, and investors. Welcome back to Iconic Baseball. I'm Iconic Al, and today we're back into the countdown at number 50. Now, this is a player who is both extremely iconic and extremely controversial. He was banned from baseball in 1989 for betting on the game as a player manager. But what is not controversial is his ability. As a player, he was one of the all-time greats, one of the most tenacious players, one of the most competitive players to ever play the game. He compiled 79.6 WAR over his 24 Major League seasons, in which he compiled one of the most iconic numbers in baseball history, 4,256 hits. Now, he edged out Ty Cobb for the title of Hit King. He has more hits than any player in Major League Baseball history. Now, to me, that number is one of those iconic elite numbers, right up there with Cy Young's 511 wins, Nolan Ryan's 5,714 strikeouts, right up there with Rickey Henderson's 1,400 stolen bases. I really think that number, 4,200 hits, is never going to be challenged again in the game. So I think his legacy is solidified in terms of his baseball legacy. Now, will the stance soften one day on his gambling? Potentially. But whether or not that ever happens, I really believe his legacy is intact as a 3-time world champion, a 3-time winner of the batting title. And if you look at his numbers, what he was able to accomplish with his 746 doubles, I mean, you can go down the line. It is just striking. I'm talking, of course, about Charlie Hustle, the great Pete Rose.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and cracker jack. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Hey, Pete Rose! What's a man really want from an aftershave?
Not fancy perfume.
Or fancy bottles?
Not fancy prices.
No!
A man wants to smell like a man.
There's something about Aqua Velva.
He wants to be cool and refreshed.
There's something about Aqua Velva. A man wants to feel like a man.
Feel like a man.
'Cause there's something about an Aqua Velva man.
Mr. Pete Rose, where do you start? Well, if we start back in his first year of pro baseball, 1961, playing for Tampa, he was extremely fast. His nickname was Scooter, and he stole 30 bases. In fact, he was timed at 3.7 seconds to first base, which, to put that in context, would compare to a Byron Buxton or a Billy Hamilton in the modern game. So Pete Rose had ridiculous speed, which most people don't really know. It's elite speed. But it wasn't speed that captured the imagination of fans. It was his attitude. It was utterly mad. This is a great quote from Joe Posnanski in his latest book. But he never stopped. The guy ran to first base on walks. He ran from the on-deck circle into the batter's box. He sprinted on and off the field between innings. He kept going on the bases until someone dared stop him. There were no rundowns for Pete Rose because he just kept going. He would see outfielders with the ball in their gloves and still take off for the extra base. Johnny Vandermeer once said, "Rose is aggressive every minute of every day. He's aggressive when he's batting, running, or playing the infield." He has 2 great quotes about Pete Rose. Quote, "He's got more stomach than a parachute jumper," and "he runs like a scalded dog." At his first Major League spring training camp in 1962, Rose was so maniac on the field that during one game against the Yankees, Whitey Ford leaned over to Mickey Mantle on the bench and said sarcastically, "Hey, look at Charlie Hustle over there." Ford meant the nickname derisively, and everyone at first kept using it to poke fun at Rose, but he loved it. He was no longer Scooter. He was Charlie Hustle. So that's how Pete Rose got that nickname of Charlie Hustle. It was actually Whitey Ford and Mickey Mantle poking fun at him. You look at Pete Rose's numbers, they paint a picture of a gamer, someone who showed up and fought every day. Over 24 seasons, he compiled 79.6 WAR, He hit .303 for a career, with .375 on base percentage. If you dig deeper within that, his walk-to-strikeout ratio, he walked 1,566 times, only struck out 1,143 times. So he did not strike out. He did not throw away at bats. He fought tooth and nail for every base. Rose did not hit many home runs, 160 in his career. However, he did have power. He ended up second all-time in doubles with 746. The only man who has more doubles than Pete Rose is Tris Speaker. The one number everyone knows about Pete Rose is 4,256. That is his hit total, and chisel that number in stone, he will always be the hit king. He was the ultimate utility player. He was a switch hitter. Of course he was a switch hitter. He could do it all. He played 1,300 games in the outfield, 939 games at first base, 628 games at second base, and 634 games at third base. So he pretty much played around the diamond wherever he was needed, wherever he could get in the lineup every day. And the thing that really set Pete Rose apart was his postseason play. So yes, he compiled really, really amazing career numbers, but if you look at what he did in the postseason, he played 67 games in the postseason and hit .321. So significantly higher career postseason average than his .303 career average, which that speaks volumes. A guy who amps up his numbers in the postseason, that's a reason for Pete Rose's legacy. He was the 1975 World Series MVP with that iconic Big Red Machine. I mean, he was the spark plug for that Big Red Machine. And he hit .370 in that 1975 World Series, in which he won the MVP. He was a three-time world champion, twice with the Reds, in 75 and 76 with the Big Red Machine, and then again in 1980 with the Philadelphia Phillies. He was obviously banned from baseball in 1989 for betting on baseball. And baseball has a pretty hard line on that. So it's unlikely in his lifetime that he would ever be reinstated. However, as I've said in past videos, whether or not a player is a Hall of Famer really does not factor into how I rank them. You know, how I covet or don't covet a player really has no bearing. I mean, a Hall of Fame status does not have a bearing on whether I collect the player. And I really believe that the hobby speaks for itself. There is a hobby mojo that players have. A Barry Bonds, for example. A shoeless Joe Jackson, for example. And it doesn't really matter that these players aren't Hall of Famers. They are collected, they are desired, and there is a robust collecting market for these players and always will be. Okay, let's take a look at what I have for Pete Rose. Here's my single signed baseball. A nice, beautiful, flowing ballpoint signature on the sweet spot. He's got a very nice, natural, flowing signature. And he's done a lot of signing in his life. Pete Rose autographs are not hard to find, nor are they expensive. So I would recommend for those looking to add something from Pete Rose to get something inscribed, or something with a special inscription, or in this case, a special item that you don't see a lot of. In this case, this is a 1980 official World Series ball from the last World Series that Pete Rose won. This kind of makes this ball a little more special than most. There aren't many of these out there that are signed by Pete Rose. So nice to have sort of a differentiator when you're buying a Pete Rose autograph. Otherwise, there are just sort of an infinite supply of Pete Rose autographs out there on the market, autographed baseballs out there on the market. So for someone like him, I highly recommend getting something that's got some special inscription on it, or something that's a little different that differentiates it from the run-of-the-mill common Pete Rose autograph. Just my personal preference for a guy like that. Let's take a look at the signed card here. This is a 1986 Topps All-Star Glossy featuring a really nice autograph, Pete Rose. Nice and bold. The portrait itself, Pete Rose looks peeved and a little bit ornery, which is how I picture Pete Rose. Kind of perfect. But yeah, he doesn't look all that pleased. Angry about something. This may have been during his betting days, for all we know, 1986. Player manager years. And that's the back, just a standard all-star glossy back. And, I remember buying this quite a few years ago for $30 or something. You can buy Pete Rose autographed cards very cheaply. Just a matter of finding the design you like. And then this is one I've had for probably 25 years, recently graded. This is one that I picked up, I think, when I was in high school. And I bought it raw. And I couldn't have paid more than $35 for this card. I really like it because this is a 4th year Pete Rose. His rookie card was 1963. And that's one of those floating heads cards, which I'm not a big fan of. And so if I'm going to own one Pete Rose card, it's not going to be the floating head Pete Rose. Even if that is his rookie card, I much prefer his 64, his 65, his 66, his 67. I like all those better than his rookie card. So this is the one that I chose to own. And I went and got it graded about a year and a half ago. And I was really surprised that it came back a 7. That really surprised me. I was, pleasantly surprised that it got such a nice grade. And it's hard for me to think of this as anything more than a $35 card. But apparently in this grade, it's probably more of a $250 card. So that's crazy to me. But I'm very happy that it is. But that's one of my long-term holds. One of my collection staples. Beautiful card, though. A young Pete Rose in his 4th season. All right, everyone. I appreciate you joining me on the countdown. If you have not subscribed, I highly recommend doing so. Until next time, everyone, keep collecting and stay iconic.